Welcome to The Big Picture. On this show, we talk about a lot of things, and if you ever watched it, you may know that politics is one of my favorite subjects. I like to talk about not Republican and Democrat so much as common sense. That to me is the ruling, priority. Is it has to make common sense or be common sense when somebody is in office or somebody is serving the community. Anyway, on this show, my guest is Erie County Clerk Mickey Kearns, and welcome back. You're one of my favorite guests to talk about politics because you've seen it all. You've been on both sides. You've been at every level, city, state, and now county. And so, and you don't hold back. I got to give it to you. You don't hold back when it comes to talking about these things. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the clerk's office because I want to do justice to that. Sure. One of the things that you do, it's all the typical stuff. You do the pistol permits and the DMV and records for property and DBAs and stuff like that. But you also serve the veterans community. And tell me a little bit about some of the programs that you have for veterans.
Phil, if you said, what is the one thing you enjoy about the job? It's meeting the men and women who have served our country, who have fought for our freedom, who have protected us. I really thoroughly enjoy that. And we are celebrating our country's 250th birthday. I'm very patriotic. My father served. He's a Korean veteran. I had 4 uncles that served in World War II. I did not serve. So this is my way to serve our veterans. We have something called the Thank a Vet program, where we partner with nearly 1,500 businesses, and they get a discount when they have a Thank a Vet card, and you get to file your DD-214, your honorable discharge papers at the clerk's office. And you may say, well, why is that so important? When people move, they get lost, there's floods. If someone passes or they need some type of federal veteran benefits, they need that DD-214. And they did have a fire in St. Louis, so it's not so easily to retrieve. Some men and women, that DD-214 is the only document that proves, because of that fire in St. Louis, that they served our country. So we work with nearly 1,500 businesses. I know we'll use Duff's as an example. They're part of the Thank a Vet program. Many, many people that have been with the county clerk's office giving a 10, 15, 20% discount. And Phil, what I like about the program is it's a way to say thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your service. Thank you for doing what you did, the sacrifices that you and your family have made for our community. And in addition to that, when I became county clerk, we have something called the Salutes program, which the Thank a Vet program is under that umbrella. We also have, the Purple Heart William J. Donovan book, where we honor our Purple Heart veterans. And this year, we'll be honoring almost close to 50 veterans on August 7th, Purple Heart Day. And Purple Heart Day was started by George Washington, our father of our country. When you talk about patriotism and the 250th birthday, a little history lesson. And then after George Washington, it was forgotten, and then it was picked up again in World War II. Douglas MacArthur said this needs to be something that we honor our men and women who are fighting for us, who either are injured or killed in duty. So we wanted to, as Erie County Clerk, memorialize every one of those people who made that ultimate sacrifice or sacrifice for us in a way where their family members can come down and be honored. And you know what, Phil? It's so interesting because if you said to me, is there one word that describes veterans, these people who sacrifice for us, their families? The word that comes to mind is humble. They don't want special accolades. They don't want people to fawn over them. You know what they want? And they really appreciate a simple thank you. Mm-hmm. If you see a veteran and you know they're a veteran, you don't have to wait until Veterans Day to say thank you for your service. I do it all the time. It's so important, especially our Vietnam era veterans who were, really ostracized by the public. They were called baby killers. Thank God we got through that, and the men and women who served us. I mean, if you think, and I'll end on this, that the federal government, the U.S. government, would encourage them when they came home after serving our country, after protecting our freedom, that they shouldn't wear their uniform when walking through the airport. Go to a restroom, take your military uniform off, hide it from the public, and walk through so you don't get accosted by the public. So to me, adding all that up, it's one of the best parts of the clerk's office. I'm very proud of that. And working with people like Dr. John Long, who is a World War II veteran. He heads up my salutes program. Thank God he's still living today. He's 99 years old, and he's sharp as a tack.
Well, I got to tell you, every once in a while when I get up in the morning, I feel like it's my 250th birthday. But it isn't. I wasn't there 250 years ago. But I got to tell you, I admire what they set up, and I admire the courage and the patriotism that started back then, and basically laid the groundwork for the greatest country on the face of the earth. And those who knock the country, you have to look in the mirror and then think about, if it was as bad as you say it is, why does everybody want to come here? Why does everybody breaking in, whether it's legal or not legal, why does everybody want to be part of the American dream? Anyway, enough of that. The veterans, as you say, they're not walking around strutting and expecting anything. They're just basically, they're like you and I. They have done what needed to be done when it was required of them. My brother served in Vietnam. He didn't make a big deal of it. It was just, it was there. It was a job to do. And it's what provides the foundation for the freedom that we enjoy. I mean, without a military, and it's sad to say in a world that you need a military, but that's the fact of life. That's the way the world works, and we do owe a debt of gratitude to the people who serve.
Phil, I don't want to scare anyone. I have a young daughter. With technology, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to need to put more money into our military. And this is why we're learning from, the Ukraine-Russian war that it's not as expensive to use drones, but they could be more deadly. The Chinese are really getting aggressive, in the Pacific, taking islands, creating islands. They're threatening to take Taiwan. We've got some serious issues that we're going to be facing. Right now, we are at war. We forget that because we're probably living our comfortable lives in Iran, and we're complaining about the price of gas. There are some serious geopolitical issues that are going on. We always want things to go smooth because a place like the United States, but when you have countries saying death to the United States, I think we're going to have to be prepared. We need smart leaders. We need people. This is what I'm going to advocate for. If you're watching this and you're a young person, we need good people in the military. We're going to, this just doesn't happen. We can't outsource our military. We need people who are born here, and there are a lot of great young people. I disagree with people when they say the younger generation. We've got some smart young people, and you're going to need to know technology. So not to scare anyone, but the Chinese are looking to be the dominant country in the world. Communism, socialism. They don't like capitalism. They don't like the United States, that everyone has a fair chance. And you said people are breaking into this country to come here. You know what was the smart thing about the framers of this country is flexibility. They knew they didn't have all the answers. So the Constitution, you can add something called an amendment. An amendment to the Constitution. What a great system that they didn't say, we know everything. And once in a while, things have to change, and they have over the years. So we have to be prepared. But this is where voting, because we're a republic, but we're also a democracy. We elected our leaders, so making sure that the system is fair and we get the best people representing us, the people, is so important.
Well, one thing that I talk about a lot, and that is, when you judge our military or the way the country handles foreign affairs, we all live in our own little world. We all know what's going on around us to a certain extent, but very often people don't know the mentality of somebody who was raised in the Middle East or in Russia or in England, or other countries are different from us by their very nature. And there are certain areas of the world where growing up, in a desert, where nature's trying to kill you, basically, you shouldn't exist, but you do. You become toughened to certain elements, okay? And the facts of life are, strength and survival depend on power. And if you're powerful, you're my friend. And if you're not powerful, I'm going to take advantage of you, because that's the way of life in certain areas. And to understand that, the way they deal with us, if we're strong, we're going to be your best friend. But if we show weakness, they're going to take advantage of this country. And that's not just me saying this. This is if you study the world, that's the way things happen. It's not the same as growing up here in Buffalo, New York, or Erie County, or the United States. You have to understand how people who grew up in the Middle East or in Russia or in England, how they think. And then you can understand some of what goes on and why.
If you look at the 20th century, let's think about World War I, the equipment that was used by the military, and then you go, a lot of, trenches, tanks at its earliest form. The gun was just, being, modernized. Then you go to World War II and you get the introduction of airplanes, and then, obviously, big ships like the USS Sullivan that we have down on our waterfront. And then you go to the 60s under John Kennedy, and we faced nuclear annihilation for the first time. And that was, John Kennedy was the first president to say, look, we got to communicate with these people, with Brezhnev, and we got to have this conversation. And if we don't communicate with people, then we could end this planet. And there's been treaties, there's been discussion, there's been dialogue. That's all good things. But something that we're seeing, we don't want to be comfortable from this Ukraine-Russia war, is how technology is changing warfare and how drones can be utilized. How, think about this. I don't want to scare anyone, but, Cuba, which was a communist country, when we're talking about these things, we don't have the intelligence that maybe some of our leaders do. They send 1,000 drones from Cuba towards the United States, the West Coast. They could cause some serious problems, some kamikaze drones. The way warfare is utilized today has changed, and it's going to with technology. They're talking about the Chinese using drones that look like birds. They literally fly like a bird. It's amazing. So we're going to have to be vigilant. We're going to have to be, like, as you said, we wish we didn't have to put so much money into defense, because this country needs so much help. There's so many people that need help. We have a national housing issue, right? We have one here in Erie County, but we do also have a national housing issue. Phil, this is, as you said, it goes to the basic thing on Darwinism and survival of the fittest. And whoever's the strongest is going to win.
Well, we're out of time for this segment. It goes by very quickly, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about progress and evolution and the way the world works, both politically and in reality. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Mickey Kearns, Erie County Clerk Office. And Mickey is, by the way, I have to say, running for re-election to the Erie County Clerk's Office. His opponent is capable of coming in and getting equal time if he wants. Just, basically contact the station. That's the political end of it. But we're not talking about re-election right now. We're talking about the way the world works and evolution. And Mickey made a great point about how things have changed since World War I. Mechanization. In the early part of World War I, they were using horses against tanks. I mean, it was a clash of two different eras. And even in World War II, they started using horses in some battles. And so things change. And, that's probably the only constant, is that things change. And the way technology and my father was born in an era, he was born in 1911. And so he saw the very first airplanes flying around the country. And then to think that before he died, he saw a guy land on the moon, and he saw the beginning of the computer age. What he saw in a lifetime was amazing in terms of progress. Now, because of the computer age and the way technology is, both with medicine and with electronics and with warfare, that pace of change is going to be accelerated. So the people who are young now, in their lifetime, they're going to see change like we can't even imagine. I mean, the things on the horizon that will come up in the next 30 or 40 years or 50 years, we will seem like cavemen compared to that. And that's just something, food for thought. It's things are going to change, and hopefully for the better, but not always, because people are in charge and people don't always go in the direction of better.
Phil, think about this. We talked about in a previous segment, where is Erie County going? The Robert Woods Johnson Foundation provides data to say, how is your community doing? Erie County was 60th out of 62 counties to the bad. So when you think about it, we have a lot of people in Erie County who aren't doing well through health and wellness. The county executive is the only elected official that I know of that has a doctor that works for him or her at that time. So we can do more, we can do better. And with technology, I am hopeful, and we've seen this, the improvements in technology has helped modern medicine, help people live longer. But unfortunately, because of our food intake and some of our things of how we grow our foods, that the life expectancy at one point in time, which has peaked up, is now on the decline. So I am hopeful. I have a young family. I'm hopeful that we do better. And just think, I know this is going to sound so corny when I say this, but I think about it. But if you've ever been to, Disney World, and they have It's a Small World After All. And Walt Disney was a genius from the standpoint of he wanted something that would bring everyone together, all countries, all nationalities, all ethnicities. Really, when you think about it, it is a small world. And the world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, even though we have two big oceans that separate us from much of the world. But wouldn't it be nice if we could live in a peaceful world and we could help each other? That would be a positive thing. And I know that's something we can only dream about in today's current geopolitical climate. But you know what? Why not? Why can't people get along together? I don't know. But Walt Disney had that dream. And I always think about that when I hear that song, It's a Small World After All. What a genius. At least someone trying to be positive to say, maybe someday it could work.
Well, human nature is basically good. I mean, most people, that I know, and most people that I've dealt with in the past, are honorable people. But there is an element, and everybody knows this, there is an element of people out there who will steal your car. I just had the sheriff on one of my programs, and he said in Erie County, there's a record number of car thefts and break-ins and stuff. Some people will do bad things. And that's just an element of free will. God gave us free will, and some people take advantage of other people. We can hope for the best, and we can be honorable ourselves, but we need, like Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. We just basically need to be vigilant and have such situational awareness to protect ourselves.
Well, just think about it, Phil. We talk about our leaders and who are representing us. And, going back from Albany, I served in Albany, cashless bail, where, people know that there aren't consequences for their actions. I know the sheriff is very proactive, and it's terrible. Erie County had to put out a message for our people who are out trying to earn a living cutting grass, our construction workers, to lock their cars, because people are literally driving up. In many instances, they're leaving their car keys in their car, not because they're lazy, because they have to go back to their car numerous times to pick up paperwork, to pick up keys, to talk on the phone. It's like their office on the outside. This is the world we're living in, that people are taking advantage. But the problem that we're at today is consequences. When people know that they can be arrested and there's no consequence, and they're right back out on the street, especially for the victims. We don't hear a lot about the victims. We hear a lot about the criminals, but we don't hear a lot about the victims. And I think until people say enough is enough, we're sick and tired of some of these policies, we don't care where they're coming from, but New York State has to work for us. Government should be working for our benefit, not the criminals' benefit. And they're in and out, and I'm sure the sheriff talked about this when he was on. They're in and out, and many of our first responders, our police officers, it puts them in harm's way, because people gradually go from stealing cars to maybe breaking into homes to committing serious crimes. And that's what happens. People just don't start off selling drugs one day. They build up to it. And the decriminalization of drugs in this country too, that's also hurting us.
I had I was in Los Angeles for about 20 years, and in Long Beach, just south of Los Angeles, I had a conversation with a police officer, because there was two drug gangs, warring, and they shot up a house, and a little girl got grazed with a bullet, and it was a big deal in Los Angeles, the gang warfares and the violence that went along with it. And I asked, and a lot of these people, the gang members, were 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. I mean, they were young people. And I asked the police officer, isn't there anything that you can do to get these young people to not be in gangs? And he said to me, you know what, when I walk up to a 13-year-old and I tell him he shouldn't be a gang member, and he reaches into his pocket and brings out a stack of bills that it would take me a month to earn. Mm-hmm. And he's walking around with thousands of dollars in his pocket because he's part of a drug-related organization. How am I supposed to convince him that he's on the wrong track? And that's the problem. They were the 13 years old, the 14 years old, the 15, anybody under 16 couldn't go to jail. Right. And that's why the people who were in charge of the gangs recruited these young people to do all the dirty work. And it's, the criminal element, they have a system, just like government has a system or people in business have a system. It's another thing to deal with.
And it's very sad.
And we only have a minute left.
No, it's just very sad what's going on. But you know what? I try to stay positive. There's a lot of young people out there, as they always say, Eleanor Roosevelt, let that light shine in, and it'll always beat the darkness. So Phil, I just want to thank you for all that you do for the community And we'll just continue to have these conversations, and I think it's good for the public to hear from their elected officials. I always say, if you call your elected official and they don't get back to you, then they're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Well, we don't plan on preaching to you guys. It's sometimes we need a reminder of what's important and the way people judge things and what's behind. I always look for the why of what's going on. What's going on is easy to talk about, but why things are happening, that's sometimes very, very difficult to pin down. But it always goes back to basically money and power, and especially when it comes to government. So this program is about food for thought. Hopefully, if you like it, you'll keep watching. Maybe you'll drop us a line at WBBZ-TV. And we appreciate you watching. And I'd like to thank Mickey Kearns for being my guest. And I'd like to thank you for watching WBBZ and watching The Big Picture. And we'll see you next time on The Big Picture.